Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dynamics Corner, the podcast where we dive deep into all things Microsoft Dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned expert or just starting your journey into the world of Dynamics 365, this is your place to gain insights, learn new tricks, and hear from industry experts. I'm your co-host, Chris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on August 29th, 2023. Chris. I didn't lean forward there. Wait, I just did it. I'm sorry. Insights are important. We have an amazing episode here. We were able to talk about things such as the history of telemetry. I learned so much about where it came from, what it's all about. We also were able to talk about the BCPT. You have to listen to know what that means. And we talked about also,
BCLE.
The important message of saving the world a little bit every day by eating elephants. Have you ever eaten an elephant?
Oh yeah, every day in our lives.
I eat a little bit of one every day too. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Kennie Pontoppidan.
Hello.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you, Brad and Chris?
Very
Good,
well,
good.
thank you. Very well. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Of
We know
course.
your time is valuable. As with every episode, I always get excited to speak with everybody, even more so with seeing some of the things that you've been posting and some of the things that you've been sharing for the BC community, or the Business Central community, that I wanted to speak with you about.
Sounds good.
So I've been looking forward to it. Before we jump into it, and I wanted to bring up a few things that we spoke about recently as well, but could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Now or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So my name is Kennie Pontoppidan. I'm a program manager in the product team of Business Central. I've been at this position or role for the last 7 years. Prior to that, I've had a long career in consulting and software development across different industries, working with databases, data warehouses, software development. Yeah, I think that's probably something. I'm married with 3 children, and I live in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Oh, nice. And now we see a lot of, you've been posting quite a bit now with the updating of documentation, as well as a lot of information on telemetry. There's a lot of, in what appears to be a lot of emphasis behind the telemetry to allow for troubleshooting, or not even just troubleshooting, but analysis for a Business Central implementation, whether it be online or on premise. Before we
Correct.
talk about
Yeah.
But before we talk about that, from the conversation we had previously, you had a saying that I think that you had mentioned that you follow, which to me, it is powerful, and I think it's something that resonates with myself and Chris as well, as to when we talk about why we do this podcast, why we do what we do. If you would, could you share that with us?
Of course. It's so. It's something that I like. It's kind of a motto for my working life, also a little bit of my personal life as well. And it is as follows: try to save the world a little bit every day. And what do I mean by that? It's because a lot of the things we encounter in our working lives and daily lives are like huge challenges, big elephants that you need to eat, and sometimes the best way to eat an elephant is to eat a little bit every day, like small pieces. And then from day to day, you might not see a change. But over time, when you look back 2 or 3 years behind, and then you realize, oh, we actually did achieve a lot here. Something that we probably wouldn't have done if we had to commit to a big change up front. So that's, and it's very practical. It's part of this also comes from the methodology Getting Things Done, GTD, where it's whenever you look at your daily tasks, the things that you can just do in 5 minutes, just do them right away instead of deferring and putting them on lists and so on. So that's what I try to do with, for instance, with a lot of the changes you see to docs, is I'm working on something, and the best way I learn is through docs, because that's the interface to. I hate this tacit knowledge, so because I don't have it. I haven't been part of this community for a long time. So whenever I look at docs and realize, oh, why can't I find that? Or when I look at this, actually references to this article that I know exists would be nice in this context. So I simply just do a small PR for the docs team and get it reviewed, and then talk about it on social media. So trying to spread the world, spread that small change out. And specifically for open source and for projects or for documentation, this is something I hope that others will maybe do as well. Like our documentation is an open source project, everyone can contribute. So I think when I started 7 years ago, when I looked at docs, it was great, but it was also some places outdated, and we're all busy. And the approach of, yes, we know, but we never had time to do that overview articles, so because there are other things we do. Sometimes you just need to eat the elephant in small bites and just do a little bit every day. And so hopefully, if there are partners out there for Business Central developers and so on, if you see something where you can make a difference in just adding a see also link or whatever it is, just do a PR, save the world a little bit every day, and then you have contributed to a better life for all your friends.
That is a great philosophy.
I love that.
And it's sometimes a task can be daunting, and sometimes I myself have to remember that you have to just peck away at it or chip away at it. You know, I like your analogy of eating the elephant one bite at a time. Eventually you'll eat the entire elephant, but if you try to take the whole thing at once, it's impossible to eat the entire elephant in one bite. And another key point that you had made within the community with what you're referring to as the open source, open source with the docs, open source with the application, everybody can contribute, because now with everybody contributing, it makes for a better experience for the customers, which makes for a better product, which makes for better implementation, which makes for more customers wanting to use the application and have a positive experience, which makes everybody who works with it do well as well. So it's not just I'm giving information away. And I think we've had conversations about the open source or contributing to the open source before, where contributing something to the application or to the community isn't giving away your knowledge. It's helping make for a better product, which you can return and have more successful implementations. There's 8 billion people in the world. And of that, how many different organizations that would use Business Central? We all can eat the elephant, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And with sharing, I think this also comes from a former company. I was employed at a consultancy company called Miracle. So shout out to all the Miracle people out there that I know. They had a philosophy on maybe not open source as such, but sharing source or sharing things with customers. So if they had developed something for one customer, they would gladly give that software away for free, and then maybe do consultant hours by making it fit for customer too, instead of trying to sell the same solution for everyone. Now, is that a good business decision? I don't know. It felt really good as an employee, and as a way to. You always felt as a consultant that you are never cheating a customer. You are always giving away everything for free. And you know what? I think this company got a lot more billable hours out of that than trying to protect whatever bits and pieces they had developed. Because a customer would just feel like, oh, wait, we can get started much further into this project by just reusing something. So we'll just continue with this. There's probably even more login from a consultancy company point of view by doing that, because now you get into the project, you deliver, and you keep working with the customer. So I think I like that a lot. I took that into my role here at Microsoft. So a lot of the ideas about open sourcing things is just put it on BCTech if it makes sense. If it's also a playground where we can kind of put things out there that's not supported, maybe never yet. ADLS to BC is one example of a code sample that is popular but not going to be supported. It still brings value, so why not give it away, make it available? Sometimes I use BCTech as a playground for ideas and for things on docs and like not strategies, but maybe solution architectures, put them out there, test it with the community. And sometimes it moves into docs, sometimes it just stays there. A lot of the telemetry samples are actually being moved into the KQL samples on telemetry is being moved into docs gradually. But it all started as a playground where I could just like put things out there very quickly.
And when you reference BCTech, you're referencing the GitHub repo for BCTech where there are samples are in there if somebody
Correct.
wants to have access to them. Great. You had mentioned
Yes.
telemetry. I see a lot of conversations around telemetry, and I see you mentioning new additions to telemetry, new queries that can be executed to test for performance, which I hope to talk about performance as well as in the performance toolkit
Correct.
in a moment. But that also excites me. Performance toolkit and automated testing is something that excites me. But with telemetry, I've had conversations with many in the community, and I think depending on who you speak with, they may or may not fully understand telemetry, the purpose of telemetry, or maybe an overview what you could do with the telemetry. With you spreading a lot of
telemetry
information about telemetry, can you tell us a little bit about the history?
Yeah, of course. Let's go back a few months, many moons ago. It was a dark and stormy night. Telemetry, I sometimes tell the story like this. Telemetry is just a fancy word for usage data. That's all there is to it. We just call it telemetry because it's fancy, right? But it's just data of what happens in a system. And when we started Business Central journey towards SaaS, the online version, there was a lot of input from partners on losing visibility. This is also sometimes we call this area observability because it's about observing a system through data or through metrics and logs. And the feedback we got was, and I totally relate to that, how can we trust our precious customers into the hands of Microsoft running this service without us having any visibility into that thing, right? Performance, stability, so on. That's where it all started. So that's why we thought, okay, let's see if we can find, first of all, a technology that can be used for that is in the cloud. And we looked at a few. Back in the days, there were two competing technologies: Azure Monitor or Log Analytics, and Azure Application Insights. We bet our money on Application Insights because it seemed it had some UI already and things like that. Eventually, those two products actually merged into one. So now all of this is part of a suite called Azure Monitor. So it doesn't really matter. But we quickly realized that we needed some insights or observability into online tenants or environments for partners. So we decided to roll with database performance, long-running SQL queries as the first type of signal, and then we also wanted to use this to drive down incidents and support cases. So that was where we thought that telemetry on login failures would actually make a lot of sense. We could also enhance this data with description troubleshooting guides, or TSGs as we call them. In Microsoft, we always abbreviate everything to small, like comprehend. So
Nice.
yeah, that's why say troubleshooting guide when you can say TSG. Yeah,
exactly.
So the story behind it is actually started as a deflection tool on support cases and support tickets. During the first that was back in version 15, so a few releases back or waves back. We fairly quickly learned that we needed some kind of guiding principles on this, because first of all, we're asking partners to use a cloud service that they will pay for, at least for some amount of traffic. And for this to really be understood and used, we also wanted to make sure that we are not breaking anyone using that data. So very, very quickly, we had these guidelines. So telemetry must be treated as an API from us, so we don't change things. So any report you build on telemetry actually works all the way back to version 15. It might be that some of the queries need to be adjusted for older versions, but so API, it has to be documented. So that's also where the good documentation for telemetry comes with that it's built into the design process. Whenever we add new telemetry, we think of that number 2. It must be discoverable in docs and have good documentation. And then the third part is it must be actionable and useful for a partner or customer. So it doesn't make sense in the online version that we emit metrics on CPU counters, right? Because it's a SaaS solution. So what can you use that for? You can't do anything. You can't scale up and down in SaaS. So we're not emitting that. So we have an evaluation criteria very strict that it must be actionable by. So you need to explain when you want to add telemetry to the Business Central app or service that, like, we always ask, like, what will partners use this for? What can they do with this information? And if you can't answer that, then we're not adding it. It could be that we do it for our internal telemetry, but not what we expose to partners. And then, so that's also where things like event ID actually came in within the first 6 months, because we needed a way when you look at something in telemetry to find it in docs. That's why we borrowed the event ID from the Windows event log. And then we kept adding more and more. In the beginning, it was this deflection of support, but we realized that we could do much more if we gave usage telemetry as well. So not just telemetry for troubleshooting, but also insights into how customers are using Business Central. And this brings me to the fifth pillar to this, privacy, because during this, actually, while we were doing this, we also spent an enormous time on privacy regulations, GDPR and so on, making sure that what we did in the service was compliant. So this also means that telemetry is born compliant with privacy laws. We do not add any customer data or any user identifiable information in there. So that's the fifth question we also always ask. We actually do a privacy review for each new type of signal we add. And then I was young and naive adding this, so I thought, okay, people will be data-driven if you give them data. But what happened was that nothing happened. A few front runners were using it, but I got the feedback, look, it has to be easy, clickety-click insights before it's going to have a broad usage. There's so many things partners need to up their game on, with new compiler, new language, new client, new cloud, like all of that. So you need to make it easy if you want to compete with these other things we need to learn. So I started adding things, and that's where the open source really took off. So I was inspired by Jupyter notebooks for troubleshooting. So clickety-click. That didn't actually fly a lot, but it was an attempt. I got the feedback that it was too technical. So then I started learning Power BI and added. Actually, I converted some of our internal Power BI troubleshooting reports in it to work on this telemetry, and then I added these Power BI samples on GitHub. And I got the feedback, because then I thought, now you're data-driven because you have reports. And people told me no, because it's still complicated for us to deploy, like download, and like, how you need to make it easier. And then I got some help from a team in Power BI who runs the template apps, so these Power BI apps on AppSource. And they helped me get started on how could we publish this to AppSource to make it truly clickety-click. And I think that was 1.5 years ago that we released the first version on AppSource in a beta version. And then I think from there on, it actually did take off with lots of MAU now on this, lots of people using it. But it also led me to think about, because we started in what I call the basement with something very technical. Troubleshooting is technical. People don't see the sun when they sit in the basement and work on these things. So that's the analogy
you have the
there.
Best analogies. The best analogies. I appreciate it. I might have to steal some of them.
But I realized that, look, we can do much more. So just because we started with telemetry as a technical discipline, it was really a shame that it didn't come out to a broader audience, because it's so much more useful by the usage parts of that. So that's why last year or 2 years ago, I started working on this telemetry maturity model, basically taking a Gartner strategy model for maturity of being data-driven in an organization called the Gartner BI maturity model, and just interpret that into the world of telemetry and with the world of partners. And then I shook that model, and out came this maturity model that helps partners be more data-driven with telemetry. So it's trying to take this out of the basement and into the world of salespeople, of implementation projects, and so on. So that's what I've been trying for the last year, 1.5 years, trying to take it into non-technical roles and kind of see if we can have this telemetry as a tool for helping customers or learn about the way customers use Business Central and other services, and plan for better sales follow-up meetings. That's a session I've done a few times at Directions, where I start with a sales meeting from hell. I don't know. I mean, I've been working as a consultant, also pre-sales, tech pre-sales. I hate these sales meetings where a salesperson comes into a room with a customer and starts asking these probing questions. So, how's it going? Did you like the new thing we did for you? Blah, 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 blah. Trying to find other places to sell. And if you think of all these questions as seen from the customer, that person is just asking the same question over and over again. I have no idea how you use this thing I sold you. and I don't care. Instead, go into that sales meeting being prepared with data, and go in there and say, look, before we even talk about this, what are we going to do? We have seen all these errors you see in our blah, blah, blah. We're on it. So let's just park that for now. Okay, that's nice. The customer will feel that you care. And then you go in there and say, look, we can see I can see the way you use Business Central. In these areas, we have similar customers who actually also use these modules, and you're not using it, because I can see that in the report. I can even share it with you. So should we start some POCs on that? Or, look, we can see that you're not doing anything, not doing a lot of automation with Power Automate and other things with Azure services with Business Central. That's a shame, because there's so much potential there. We're actually doing a free event on Friday. You can come in and see a presentation with other customers and have a cup of coffee and a beer, and we can learn more. Whatever, go into that meeting prepared with data, and I'm very sure that will give you much more billable hours than that probing technology that I hate so much.
No, that is a great
So I can talk
example.
about this for hours. No, I'm sorry if that's...
No, you can
I love the
talk
history.
please. I see a lot of this information. I have conversations, but to hear some of the story and for you to validate some of the usage, because to hear that it could be used as a performance tool, but also as insights to how the application is being used, because I have spoken with others in the community that use it as a training tool. They saw what customers were doing, they saw the errors that they were getting, and sometimes they reached out to them and said, oh, this new functionality was added, we see you're not using it. So would you like me to show you how to use it, or you could become more efficient if you start using this? And it can be, it's such valuable data that if you can get to it easy, like you said, everyone takes the, I think humans by nature take the path of least resistance, and they want things easy. That's why we have, advances in technology to simplify and to make things easier for people. With the telemetry,
and talking about making it, sorry.
Go ahead.
You go first. Okay. Talking about making this, I'll just say one more thing. The next step I want to try to take this with the partner community is exactly making it easier, in the sense that go from reactive to proactive with alerts, so that you can do so much. So think about telemetry is just data. With the Power BI reports, you convert that into insights. You also sprinkle a little bit like these stories I tell about how you can use it. So that brings that data or these insights to life for given personas in different situations. But what about taking actions? So that's the next step, and that's what I've been working on for the last year. Last year at Direction's keynote in EMEA, I demoed the Power BI metrics, I think, the scorecards that you can put on top, where you can actually start tracking certain metrics in the Power BI report to see if they change, and you get automatically alerted in Teams if things change. And I'm trying to push this specifically for project managers, implementers, because before go live, if you want to track these 5 things that make a success, like certain types of errors, permission errors, or whatever it is you want to track, set that up early in the project on telemetry and these reports. And they would just keep alerting you after go live that suddenly you are regressing on something, and you can react very quickly with the customer, and you can kind of see trends and so on. That's something I hope that we can together invest in. I don't know how we're going to productize that. I have ideas. I can share it here. Why not build, like we have Power Automate templates in the product. Why not have a simple setup page in Business Central where you configure, I want to alert on these types of things that we know is in telemetry. And you deploy this automation thingy that can read your configuration, can read telemetry, and suddenly you have an easy way to be alerted, and you can configure your channels you want to send, whether it's IT or whatever it is. Like, what if we could build something with the existing tools and just plug it? Like Business Central is great for easy app development. It could be a Power App as well. Telemetry is where you have the data, and automation is in Power, and I don't know.
That's a good idea.
That is a great idea. That is so. It does. It simplifies the management, and like you said, make things proactive versus reactive. And when you're proactive, the customers have a better experience. With telemetry, the telemetry data is stored in Azure. And how much data is stored, and there's a cost to this data, and how can you manage those costs? I have spoken with some that had mentioned they turned on telemetry and they started incurring a lot of charges because of the amount of data that was being collected, because it was a high volume, high user implementation.
I get that question a lot. Actually, I get it less now, because part of the docs for telemetry has a section on controlling costs. So we can just put that and maybe as reference in the podcast, but or on YouTube. But before we do that, this is a story I try to tell about this. Like, would you ever subscribe to a service somewhere? Could be pizza service delivering, like something that delivers pizzas to your home on a regular basis, or any subscription, anything where you subscribe to things where the cost is not fixed. Wouldn't you always start by making sure that you have control over that cost, that you have a cap over it and so on. You understand it. Yes, of course you should. You should never spin
Absolutely.
up a big SQL database, the beefiest one, and just leave it on, right? You would always. So with this resource, you would do the same. And what we try to put in docs is kind of some steps, like put a daily cap, understand your usage, and then from there on, think about if you filter out too much or if you miss out, you can kind of fine tune. But there are some strategies that we put directly in docs on telemetry on that everyone should know of, so that they don't get this surprise of it's because that's the worst thing you can do, especially in SMB, is if people have a perception of this is expensive, then that's not good, right? In enterprise, probably very easier there, but SMB is a little bit more tight with money. So you want to make sure that you actually get some bang for the buck, and you need to understand what it costs. So in docs, we also put in some sample numbers on normal customers, on high values, and so on, so people get an idea of what is expensive. And what I know is that for some customers, $200 a month is kind of what they spend for a customer, but that might be like a 200 user system. So maybe it's fine to spend the $200 to have insights into such a complex IT implementation. Anyway, all of that, I put it on docs because, again, save the world a little bit every day is also for me. Because if I get that question bi-weekly, I want to put it into docs and deflects so that I go read. And if the question comes, I can just paste in a link and say, go read. So that's also saving the world a little bit for me.
And it saves your time as well, because you don't have to answer the same question over and over. But that is one question that I see a lot. And within that document, we'll put a reference to that document in the notes so that others can see that document, because that is a common question. And like you had mentioned, you can have caps. There is some value to having the telemetry, like you had stated. So even if there is a cost, sometimes you have to appreciate what you save in time or what you save in problems to have that, or even if you can turn it on or turn it off or scale it for certain times. If you want to look at performance issues or you want to do some usage analysis, you don't have to turn it on and leave it forever as well, which is another point that as simple as it may sound, sometimes can be confusing, but it's important to note that you can control when you do it as well. And so you mentioned privacy, and I have come across a situation. You mentioned that you go through a privacy review, but there is another question that someone had presented to me with the telemetry is, I don't want Microsoft seeing all of my stuff. I don't want you seeing all of my stuff. And you mentioned you go through a privacy review, which is great, but how would you answer that question because someone feels like, oh, Big Brother's watching me, or I'm being watched, or what are you doing in my system? You're seeing this information. How do you think that story is told?
So first of all, the telemetry that you configure, I don't have access to that, period. And none of the engineers in the product group have access to that, period. So that's your data, or it's actually the customer's data, but you might be the as a partner, the one who is taking care of that. So that's question number one. What about engineers prying your customer data in Business Central? That is a great question. We actually documented a bit on that, on how we deal with incident management, and I'm not sure how much we put on docs, but basically it is very, very difficult to get access to a customer database in the first place. It requires, first of all, justification, and it has to be approved by an incident manager. If you do so, everything is logged, and it's for a period of time. So let's say that's an engineer needs to troubleshoot a customer issue where they must have access to data to understand. That's they would typically get access for four hours, and that's automatically revoked. And it is going through this locked process where it's logged, it's justified, and it has to be approved by an incident manager to get that JIT request or JIT access, just-in-time access. Then what about Microsoft spying on you? That's the third part of that question. So we do have internal telemetry, We actually have a lot of telemetry of what's going on in the service. Same privacy issue applies there. We are really, really careful not to emit customer data to our telemetry, because we simply do not want to have the, say, GDPR responsibility for that data. GDPR, for instance, in the European Union comes with some, let's say that you have these rights where you are, for instance, your right to be forgotten. Lots of these privacy laws comes from marketing or social media, where companies collect a lot of data and profile and so on. But the same laws apply to a telemetry service also internally for Business Central. So our server team spent, I think I was part of that initiative as a program manager, probably 2 full engineering years, looking through every single log call in the NST in the server and determining the privacy, let's say, setting on that. Was it customer data? Was it user identifiable? Was it service data? Was it so on? So everything is classified in our server. The same classification is actually what you can see in the public, in the partner telemetry. When you in the AL language write a log message call, you actually need to specify a privacy classification on this data. So that's the same we use internally. And then we have alerts. You cannot check in code. We also have privacy reviews, or part of our code reviews, that we are not allowing a change to the server if we log personal data to telemetry. It's not allowed. We're not doing that. Except we do have what we call transient telemetry. So we do have, I think it's maybe 48 hours or something, where we are allowed to see more, simply because that is the only way we can treat a support request if we need to know the user there. And then it's automatically flushed. So we have a small cache of data where we log this, but it's approved by our legal team to be a place where it is okay, because it's for supporting the product. But we never copy that data out to a store where we store it for longer. And going to that transient telemetry also require a JIT access. So you need to have special rights to go and look at that data. So we are very paranoid internally about privacy. We take it really serious.
No, that's good to know, because that question does come up with a lot of individuals in the online environment are sensitive with their data, justifiably so. So it's good to see that there are measures within there. Telemetry can do so much. It can do so much we talked about with insights, we talked about performance. But the other thing I wanted to see if we could talk about with you is the performance toolkit. As far as Business Central is concerned. We have you here, so I want to try to jump on as many topics with you as possible that I know that you're dealing with. But the performance toolkit, if you could tell us a little bit about the performance toolkit. What is the performance toolkit? What can it do? And how can it be used?
So, I mean, we shorten everything. So it's, of course, we don't call that the Business Central Performance Toolkit. We just call it BCPT. It's easier, right? So BCPT, Business Central Performance Toolkit. What is that beast? So this is a pet project of engineering manager Boxy from the app team, who runs all the app teams all up. And what he wanted to do, and he put some great engineers to try to solve this problem, was the following. How could we simulate concurrent usage of Business Central in a way where it should be easy to simulate, and it should be scenario based. It should not be unit tests, right? Because you can do as many unit testing or integration, maybe this is more an integration test more than a unit test, but an end user doesn't care if a particular click is fast or not. Like, an end user cares if the end-to-end flow coming from A to B to complete this full task is slow or fast. That's what they care about. Create an invoice, post an invoice, whatever it is. The end-to-end step, this is what we call scenarios in BCPT. And the tool is about testing those and also test those in a concurrent manner. Why? Because we are lazy. We get these questions all the time. Can Business Central handle 50 users with this kind of throughput of transactions and blah, 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 right? So we thought that it's an impossible question to answer because the only way to really answer it is try it out. But it's really expensive to have 50 people do things. So that's where this tool was born. Could we, in a way, have a tool that can simulate real users working in the system concurrently so that you can, in an easy way, set up, I want 10 people doing sales activities, I want 50 people working on the warehouse, and I want some people working in finance to do their things. And then let it run for a full day and get some results. That's kind of the initial ideas behind this. It was initially just done as an app so there's an AL extension that where you set this up and you run it. But that turned out to be hard to do the full concurrency tests. So what the team did, I think last year, was do a POC and later on release this as a VS Code extension so that you can actually run all these suites from VS Code, and therefore you have ability to do much more concurrency testing there. I took over as a program manager for this tool 6 months ago, and what I wanted when I took over, I kind of looked at this holistically and thought, this is a great thing, but we need this to happen for every single app or for every single implementation before they go live. That's kind of the North Star I want to take this to. And we're not there yet at all. So what we put in kind of our strategy for this tool is like 5 different pillars. I'll see if I can remember. The first one is remove friction. It must be super easy, even for a project manager that doesn't write code, to click, 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 set up and run. Like it shouldn't be something that should be perceived as a tax on an implementation problem for a project. It should be so easy as that. Then we had things like once remove friction. Let's see, I don't even remember the 5, but it's definitely understand the scenarios for different personas. The performance test scenario is very different from a developer than from a functional consultant and from a project manager and from a product owner for an ISV. So at least these 4, I probably have a few more. So we fleshed out try to find the different personas that would be where this would make sense, and then flesh out the scenarios for each of these personas. And they're coming up on docs. They're already on BCTech now, coming up on docs. And like last week, we even dreamt another scenario through, which is the pre-sale scenario. Like if you get this customer question, can you migrate from BC or NAV on-prem to cloud? I don't know. Like then we put on kind of a rough process of how you could automate all of this with existing building blocks. So the process would be spin up an environment. It doesn't have to be a SaaS, but it could be a SaaS sandbox. Install the apps from app source that you know you're going to do. Spin up a dedicated telemetry environment. Attach it to this. Configure BCPT, a performance toolkit, with the scenarios that you talk with the customer of what they want to simulate. Let it run. Part of what we did with telemetry is that there is actually a report now in telemetry on your in your scenario results. So you just already have the reporting on it. It's also coming in a few months into AL Go for GitHub. Can now run BCPT suites and have results as part of your build pipelines. So we're trying to cater for the ISV persona there. But in the end, kind of what if we could, instead of making that pre-sale some guesstimate of whether Business Central can handle that, why not simulate it, and why not make it in a way where once we fit this together with automation, within a day, like click, 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 set up your scenario, you need to talk to the customer of what they want, like what they would want to achieve, and then kick it off and get the results in Power BI so that you can see for yourself how Business Central is handling the scenarios you want. That's one of the things I'm working on right now. But this is just conceptually defining the process. And then we'll see if we can, if we have some success of maybe describing it is fine, because all these steps except the configure part actually has APIs today. But maybe we can bundle all of that into something that a tool for partners for pre-sales where you can just and then
that would be great.
Really cool.
I like that click, click, click. I think it's a great dream, because one of the things that you had mentioned, can you upgrade to do it? Another question that I see often is, and it's kind of a loaded question because the answer is depends, but how many users can Business Central have? How many, can it support my size implementation? I know there's a lot of questions to that with, how many users, what are your users doing? How many users, like you talked about.
Exactly.
So those would be your BCPT, right? I have to learn the acronyms, the Business Central Performance Toolkit. That's how you could put together your scenarios so that you could simulate having 10 people doing order entry, 15 people shipping warehouse picks and doing purchase orders, and you can run it simultaneously. These tests.
Yeah.
Does the performance toolkit, is it a string of unit tests? I know with the test toolkit or the test suite, you can create unit tests, but with the toolkit,
no,
is
it's
it
not.
similar to
These
that?
are actually, it's kind of different, because for now the AL code you write to get your test suites is just create invoice, blah blah blah. So it's not unit test. Unit test of testing a function and covering that with test. This is more like testing the full scenario. And then with the open source idea here is that there are two different angles to that. What I'm hoping for, or where I think this could really take off for implementation projects, is if there's a good open source suite of tests, so you can just pick the ones you want that match the customer requirement, you're done, right? And maybe if I'm lucky, maybe it's not luck, maybe it's hard work, but what if you had implementation projects where you get so much for free by reusing other people's or open source scenarios, that it is okay in your project where you need something that is not covered, that you spend the developer day to write these scenarios and give them back to the community, so that next time some other project out there could also have coverage over a service or jobs, whatever it is. Because test code has no IP in test code at all, right? It's just tedious. So if we could spread the tedious and again save the world a little bit every day. So if you gain so much from having these 100, right now we have 20, I think. I think in a year Microsoft will add another 100 scenarios, I hope. So if you have 100 scenarios to pick from, maybe it's okay to spend a little bit of time writing that one you're not having and then give back to the community. But something else might just disrupt all of this, and that is called the task recorder. So I think this was demoed at some tech conference in
BCTech
Europe last year or some BCTech days. Yeah,
I think I saw it.
So the idea is that, so that was part of Vincent, our chief architect, from the lab session, where we actually have technology, what we're not there yet, but we have a prototype where we can record what's happening, not with screenshots, but the actual actions that are performed. If we translate that to the AL things that are happening, which means that maybe we could make that be the front end of recording as a scenario. So we would just need to translate these actions into the appropriate AL BCPT suites language, right? And then the idea of creating a scenario is not writing code, but it's actually clicking through a scenario and save it. And then, so that might be even make it easier to share these scenarios with the community. Let's see where it takes us.
That is amazing. Then it does become click, click, click. And if you're recording the actions or macros, what people may be used to back from years ago, it does allow it to be unique to the customer or a process.
Yeah.
So if a customer has a certain process that they want to follow, when you do your testing, you can play back their scenarios as well as if you record it. So
yeah,
I think that with a combination
and for ISVs,
that with the combination of the unit tests, you can test every change in an automated fashion just to see the impact on the system to make sure that it's going to perform well as nothing breaks in the process as well, which is
exactly
profound.
And that's the change we're bringing to AL Go for GitHub in a few months is exactly that. So we allow you to configure as part of your build pipelines which BCPT suites you want to run, and the build output is, and you also can then give a threshold file of a previous run to say this is kind of expected baseline, and the build artifact would then show you where you regress. So that's coming in a few months already for the ISVs, and
Very
hopefully
cool.
that will remove friction for the ISVs to start using this as part of their DevOps pipelines.
That is amazing. All these changes are coming. Sometimes it's tough to keep up. I think the world's moving too fast for me. My old age is getting me.
You said
Sorry.
moving things so fast. One of those things is AI. So I'm curious how that is going for the telemetry side of things, because I saw some and I was like, wow, that's amazing to summarize things for me much quicker than myself.
So cannot share a lot on AI because we actually want to kind of release when we think it's ready for the market. But what I did pick some low-hanging fruits for AI on telemetry on the Power BI reports, because Power BI comes with some visuals that are driven by AI. So there are 3 of these that I added to the performance investigation reports on telemetry. The first is AI summary. I don't think it, well, I don't, actually, let me state this differently. The usefulness of these really depends on the data you have, because that's with little or bad data or synthetic data, AI things are just showing you garbage. So I actually don't know how well they work in the real life. I can just see that for some of the places where my demo data was good enough, I could see the decomposition tree where you can have AI help you drive where time is spent. Seems to be working pretty well. And the KPI insights where we use, or AI use statistics to kind of drive to say, well, the impact, the highest impact on load time is when people use this app. That is something I added, I think, in June or something, or July, to the Power BI apps. Let me know how they work, because I can't really. These are the things I need to see them with real data to see the impact of that. So be curious to know what people think.
I think that would be great. And I think if with AI, even do we talk about being proactive versus reactive, I would love, and I've had conversations where you can have AI analyze your telemetry data, as Chris had said with the question, to help you see that a problem is coming, or to see that you have a problem before you have a problem. That way you can reach out to a customer and tell them your system is degrading, or we have this type of problem. Maybe we should take a look at it to help limit the downtime. So
I actually saw that. We demoed this at BCTech Days back in June, I think it was. I prepped the demo for Stefan, who was the lead of the compiler team, and he was showing this. And it was fun because I was cheating a bit with the data, but don't tell anyone. Because I needed like volume of data, right? So I was collapsing different apps into this same app. But the interesting thing was this KPI insights actually came up and suggested there was a regression from this version to this version just based on that data. So an ISV looking at that performance report would just in their face have AI tell them there's a regression from version 41 to version 42 on load in your app. Right there in your face.
Amazing.
I think that's pretty powerful. Yeah.
That's extremely powerful. So, you put that as part of your tests, and it all goes back to making the world a better place a little every day, as you said, because it enhances the customer experience. You have the tools that makes the product better, or makes the implementations better. And I'm a big fan of that. So we talked about a lot of information here. My mind is full, as they say, and I see more and more how important it is to focus on certain areas. I mean, the product or the environment or the community is spreading out. You mentioned Power Automate, Power BI, Telemetry, Performance Toolkit. There's so much out there. Do you have any suggestions or guidance on how to keep up with all of this information, or how to focus to get the maximum effort out of it? Back early on, the application was small and one person could do so much. Yeah.
Let me ask you, before I answer that, for which persona? Because I think that will make my answer better. You say you cannot cover everything. So where do we start?
Let's look developer, at two personas, or three, right? We'll look at a developer, a functional consultant, or what some people call a functional consultant, or someone who implements the application, works with the customers, not from the development point of view. And then also maybe even from the customer perspective, if we could cover those three personas.
Got it. Okay, good. Let's start with the developer. So actually, this answer will be applicable to anyone working at a partner organization, whether it's ISVs, VARs, or mix or anything. We spend a lot of time building online content for this called Business Central launch event. So this is every year for the release. Since COVID, we are recording videos on the new things that are coming up in what's new for developers, what's new for blah blah blah. It's free. It's an online event, and you can watch it at your own pace. And when I ask about how many people watch this at Directions audiences, it's like 10%. Like, how stupid is that? You have the product group creates learning videos on all the new features twice a year. It puts out there online for free, and it's not being consumed. I don't get it. So my first answer to the internal, whatever you are, go at least watch some of this content in the context of what type of persona you are, and maybe throw an internal party at your partner organization. Like this Friday, we'll pay for the pizzas. All the conference rooms are there where we'll show these different things, and it's a free company. It's an almost free company event, a social event. You learn something, you get together, right? So this Business Central launch event, or as we call it, BCLE, because we abbreviate everything, why not go there? It even comes with a short URL, aka.ms/BCLE. Right?
I was just going to say, with the acronyms, we had to talk about the aka.ms/ where I always wanted to have a complete list. Thankfully, they came out with a page of them all. But I used to always go through, and every time I saw one, record it. So I had it.
Yeah. Yes. So that's one way. And that also means, again, eat the elephant a little bit every day. For learning, I know it's hard to keep up. The worst thing you can do is not doing anything, right? So what I've been trying all my life, I've been not very good at it while I actually joined Microsoft, but that's also because I learn so many things during what I do that maybe I'm full when I get home. But what I tried to do in my past as a consultant, where I actually needed to keep up, was the following. I would dedicate 10 minutes every morning to learning, whether it's reading a book, something, certification, whatever it was. And I would do that before I opened my inbox, because once I open my inbox, world explodes. But if I do these 10 minutes of dedicated learning before I'm distracted, then I can actually achieve something, not in 10 minutes, but in half a year, I will actually be able to learn a new topic or whatever it is. So that's something that I think everyone can do. That is a practical way of eating the elephant one bite at a time. And it doesn't require a lot of planning. It's just when you're done with that one thing that took you half a year, okay, the next thing you want to try to learn, that's this thing, okay, that's fine. And you start eating on that. So that could be a practical way. For developers specifically, I want to invest a lot more together with my friends at the technical writers and Peter Boring, the program manager for the compiler and so on, to make the docs better for developers. I know that there are parts of that documentation that is old and dated, and we need to change that. Like the we here is not Microsoft. It is Microsoft plus the community. This is where all you guys come in place. This is why you can save the world a little bit every day. We did it over the summer on HTTP client outgoing web service calls, the support for that in AL. That was done by me and my friend in the writer organization, with a lot of input from the community, from Yammer. I asked, what do you need now? Like, what should I do? Got comments, need this, these examples. For code examples, I looked in the base app, I stole from there. I looked at blogs, and I didn't steal from blogs. I actually asked the blog owners whether it was okay to copy from there. And the two that where we copied something, we even put a contribution section in the docs that these two authors came up. So there's so much more we can do together on docs that can help learning. And this comes also to this scaling our partners. Business Central is growing in both online, mostly online actually, in a pace where partners cannot keep up. And they cannot get enough developers, right? So how can we solve that problem? With one problem, way to solve it is getting young talent in. Young talent needs to ramp up quickly. If we can have good quality docs where they can learn through examples, they will learn faster, get productive faster, and make less mistakes faster, right? Because we have good guidance. The only way we can put good guidance in if people with gray hair put some of our experience into docs. So
I lost my
for
gray
developers, hair. Docs and code samples
or no hair in Brad's.
is something where we can help.
That is all so good. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm excited for this, and it resonates with a lot that I say, is because a lot of people think they can put together a training program as my training program. I need to have this training program. But if you have a community-driven training program to allow, as you had mentioned, younger talent to come into the community to learn and to be able to onboard, in a sense, to know how to use the application, to know how to develop, it serves everybody. Because there is even with modifications, when we're working with modifications and implementations, there's always anything you have of your own, there's a carrying cost to that. Like you have a carrying cost to that modification. So if you have your own documentation, if you have your own training, you need to enhance it for each version. You need to change it if there's a mistake.
Yep.
Whereas if you can have thousands of people use it, you get the benefit of it, and you get the benefit of it staying up to date. You get the benefit of it being validated, which is the most important, one of the most important parts of it, that whatever you put together
Yeah.
gets proofed to make sure it is valid, make sure it is efficient.
And same thing applies for the base app or the system modules, right? You don't have to contribute to open source by revolutionize the world and add this perfect module that just like, and everyone would go, oh, he's so clever, right? Lots of open source contributions is change a comment or like refactor this bit because it's more readable, or this is an old pad. Like all these nitty gritty things fall into the save the world a little bit every day. The things you always do when you change something, the things that annoy you when sometimes there can be different ways, and that would be like alternating annoy. But many things is where you like a true open source mindset to also to the base app can really help everyone on the because we have like thousands and thousands of AL developers out there. If all of you do like one PR a month, once a week on docs, on base app, we can truly save the world a little bit every day, and there will be huge. I mean, probably my friends in the docs team and the app teams would go, no, too many PRs to review. But maybe that's a luxury problem compared to how we improve things at scale.
Oh, that's good. So that we talked about the developer, we talked about anybody at a partner. What is there anything for the functional consultants?
Yes, so this is where I'm weak because I live in the basement, right? I work with the platform. So what I think there is, we are. So I can't say anything about the actual functional modules themselves. I'm not an expert on that, so leave that to others. But I do know, because as part of my role as a PM, I own our reporting strategy for the platform together with a PM friend in application. We're actually trying to change the game for reporting all up. And there's a lot of things going on in that area right now and is coming over the next years. So Excel layouts, allowing self-service for customers to change the layout, so no developer is needed anymore for that. Data analysis on lists and now soon on queries, allow ad hoc querying, pivoting directly in the product. Better embed story for Power BI is coming in the next wave as well. I see a lot of things happening in this space that I'm not going to talk about because this is kind of long-term what's going to happen. But a lot of this will also change the game of a functional consultant going back to changing things that they can't. Like once we move to AL, there needed to be a developer and source control and blah, blah, blah. With a lot of these tools, we're bringing at least reporting back into the game of the functional consultant. You sit with the customer and you work with like a lot more of these self-service, or helping the customer do self-service on their reporting analytics needs. That's something where I would, as a functional consultant, bet a little bit more. The world is changing in AI and analytics a lot, right? So invest is something in your analytical skills. And then for the customers, I would say the same thing with the self-service parts there. That we're doing a lot on self-service on analytics that I think will change the game. That you can analyze data now. You can have insights. You can actually, with Power BI metrics, if you have Power BI content on Business Central, start doing actionable actions, just like with telemetry. It's now actions on your business KPIs. And try to be like proactive on your business insights instead of reactive.
No, that's important. It's all good information. And one thing I have to say in talking with you and some of the other associates that you work with, the amount of transparency and the amount of information and community support that it seems to be visible now with offering, conversations such as this, direct conversations via LinkedIn, Twitter, where you can see feedback being listened to. Feedback being, just because somebody gives feedback doesn't mean it has to be done, but at least it's being acknowledged or referenced to save the world a little every day I appreciate that greatly, because when I first started, it was almost like, oh, we're up in the glass castle, I think they call that. I'm not even certain what the saying is. I'm not certain of it, but I remember there's something like that. I'm up on the castle, and I appreciate the transparency.
Yes.
I appreciate the intent of many of the employees with Microsoft, or the product group, for all of the product, to be out there working with customers, working with the community to make it a better place or make it a better product. And I also would like to see a bunch of young new talent come in to use the application or enhance the application, as we had referenced, which is great.
Very much welcome.
Well, Kenny. Yes. Well, Kenny, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. I understand your time is valuable. We all have limited time, and for you to take the time to speak with us about the product, about telemetry, about performance toolkit, and other things, I am greatly appreciative of that. I know Chris is as well. And we were looking forward to speaking with you. Before we wrap up.
Same here.
How can someone get in contact with you if somebody had some feedback or somebody had some questions? What's the best way to get in touch with you or to see some of the great things that you're doing? You're all over the place. You're doing many amazing things, but how would you suggest somebody find you?
So I don't mind having open conversations on social media. I think my new preferred platform is actually LinkedIn. I used to be much more on Twitter because I like the, but they're also like, maybe that platform is I don't know, they're not degrading, or maybe it is, I don't know. But social media, I don't do business things on Facebook, so don't go there. For things that where you are fine with that conversation being in the open, just I'm fine with that. If you think this conversation is more like something where you want to keep it to Business Central partners, use Yammer. Yammer is actually a great place for, and also a place where a lot of people who don't like social media are more comfortable in Yammer, because it's like a more closed circle. So you can always reach out on Yammer, also with private messages there. I mean, LinkedIn direct messages, or Twitter. I'm pretty sure my email address is not hard to find somewhere. So I try to be as responsive as I can, depending on if I typically, if people say which partner should I use for that, I just say I don't know. Like, that's not my business. That's partner networking. I don't know, and I should not recommend that. If I can, I try to be responsive, and I would rather give a short answer, like immediately, and then maybe a follow-up, than think about a long crafted message. So if you might have like just gotten a 2-liner, blah, 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 go here, and then done. But you would get that within a few hours. Sometimes I feel that's better unblocking people fast, and then maybe some people will say, oh, that's very short, but that's how I do it. And then just reach out if you want, if there are other things there. So,
are you doing any speaking sessions?
I always go to directions, the main two in EMEA and US. I sometimes go to the one in Asia. This year I was not at BCTech Days. BCTech Days is more engineers that we sent there sometimes. I actually went there once because I wanted telemetry message to sync in with developers. So I might go there again. Let's see. Days of Knowledge conferences, I actually like those. They are smaller and more dedicated in a way. But there are also three conferences in Europe happening in this in the spring, together with Asia and the US conference. So it's a bit packed, but yeah, I do a lot of conference visits, and when I'm at conference, I typically just want to spend my time with partners. So I typically also give like 4 to 6, 7 sessions at a conference because I have all the sessions prepared. It's more let's if people are interested in the topics I care about, why not?
Very good.
Go for it.
Yeah, they're great. Well, thank you again. We'll put links to Yammer and your LinkedIn as well as your Twitter. I know you said that you are not as active or may not be as active as much there, but I do agree with you sometimes with the short bursts. Sometimes all those fluff words take time for the person to read as well too. So getting the information that you need is sometimes a little bit more efficient and can save some time. So thank you again for speaking with us. We appreciate it. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. All right. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
Ciao. Thank you, Chris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is Matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.